24 hours ago, Team Liquid lost to GAM, our first loss in a best of 3 or best of 5 series to a minor region in I don't even know how long. Somebody on Twitter said that apparently we've lost to them before. I don't know. I don't think it's been in the last 6 years at minimum. So it's been testy as a result of that on social media, including Twitter, YouTube, TikTok. It's been a mess. So I had to wait a little bit before I could make this video, before we could actually talk about this without tempers flaring on all sides, because we really need to dig into this without people getting too over the top, but it's still a serious matter. So to spark the conversation, I asked on X/Twitter, what was the worst performance from a North American team at Worlds in the franchise era? Notably, TSM 2016 was probably the most disappointing given like the expectation versus where they landed. But for purposes of this, we're just talking about the franchise era because a lot of these problems that we're having are structural. I agree with everybody. Clutch shouldn't be in here. I just included it because they're the original OG like 06. TSM versus Team Liquid. This is the more hotly contested conversation as of right now. And history will end up determining which one was technically worse, but it's worth talking about. Back in 2020, it was a miracle that TSM ended up winning the LCS. It would be their final title ever as an organization, and it was Doublelift and Bjergsen's return together to then go on and win a title. They were carried notably by Broken Blade and Spica in jungle, so it wasn't really high expectations going into Worlds because we've never performed well from top mid jungle internationally. Those are the 3 roles that we've just gotten outclassed on literally every time. Bot lane with Doublelift and Biofrost, they were playing weak side and they were barely getting through the tournament and LCS playoffs, so there was little to no hope for this team going into Worlds in most people's eyes, which spoke a lot about the region itself. But hey, sometimes you get hot, it is what it is. There were some people that still held faith, and I held a little bit of myself. But when they would end up going 0-6 in Worlds with the most famous play from North America ever at Worlds, it was clear that this was going to be bad. The first ever 1 seed from North America to ever drop the ball this hard at an international tournament with one of the most memorable moments. Yeah, it's going to stick in people's minds pretty much forever. Now, that said, the teams that they lost to were Fnatic, LGD, and Gen.G. Now, none of these teams ended up doing anything in the quarterfinals or really moving far in the tournament, but they still were major region teams that we ended up losing to. You can debate their quality, but there's no denying that it's not GAM. For Team Liquid, even though they were the 3rd seed from the LCS, notably Golden Guardians being the first 4 seed to go, so by normal standards, they would be our worst team to go, there were some expectations that this team would perform internationally, whether delusional or not. Summit has performed at LCK and LPL caliber before. Pyosik is the reigning world champion. CoreJJ has a title himself. And then you look at the 2 rookies, sure, they were going to need to step up their game and be carried a little bit by the team, but there were some expectations going into this. Not necessarily that they would make it out of groups or do insanely well, but definitely that they would not lose to a minor region team. That's for certain. Since their loss last night, though, more information has come out about kind of what's going on within Team Liquid. None of it's fully public yet, but Travis Gafford released a video early yesterday after the loss to kind of go over what happened. And he hinted at the fact that there might be internal issues within Team Liquid, that the team blew up in scrims or while they were at Worlds relative to where they were during LCS playoffs. And we don't know why, we don't know what, we don't know if that footage is ever going to be released according to Travis, but if I was Team Liquid, I sure as hell would. So yeah, the team imploded again for whatever reason. And I think this is the time where it is appropriate to say Dodo, who was general manager, and I think he stepped in like a coaching role as they saw shifts midway through the year as they kind of retooled after their disappointing spring split, and just management of Team Liquid need to go. It's time for them to be fired and released from their jobs. Now, I know some people, especially in esports, who don't have experience in traditional sports are gonna be like, you're really calling for somebody's head 24 hours after they just lost at Worlds? Yes, roster moves are ongoing at the current moment, and if you're not familiar with traditional sports and traditional media, yeah, these conversations are important to have, 1, very quickly afterwards, and 2, as soon as possible. Take the Pittsburgh Steelers and their offensive coordinator, Matt Canada, right now. If you don't follow the sports world, that's fine. The Steelers are leading their division in football. Now, are they projected to go on and win the Super Bowl? No. But there are universal chants everywhere across Pennsylvania calling for him to be fired because people hate the way he's coaching their offense. I agree with that point, and I agree with the point that I think that management is the clear issue here. They have been mostly the same for about 3 years now, barring some pieces changing, and they can't keep a consistent head coach. All of their rosters keep blowing up, and when you step back, at some point, Steve has to look at management and say, okay, maybe you're the problem. There's no reason why we should be going through this many assets the entire time unless Steve is the one that's personally making these hiring decisions, that playing a part in this entire system, because whoever's making decisions about coaching staff and players coming in needs to be let go or needs to be relieved of their responsibilities, because clearly you cannot put a roster together that's going to stay together for a year, partially because you're overpaying, but also clearly because of mismanagement. It's not like you haven't had the talent, but you've done jack all with it for years now. That includes this Worlds, because just going to Worlds is not enough. So it's time and changes are needed. Going to Worlds and bombing out like this, while it sucks, is not ultimately the problem. The problem is in the payroll. Gam probably spends what? Maybe $500,000, $600,000 in salary? Maybe less, for all we know? And that's literally just one player's contract on TL. This is a clear example if you watch football of like the FA Cup. Wrexham just did a whole episode on this recently about how they're known as the Giant Slayers for taking down teams with big payroll and embarrassing them. Well, literally, that's exactly what happened to us. We are overspending for what we're getting here. It's one thing to go to Worlds and bomb out like this if you're paying minimum salaries and the team is somewhat turning a profit and you're maintaining the status quo, then hey, it is what it is. We still need to grow from there. When you are going all or nothing, broke or bust every single time, and this is what's happening, you are part of the problem. You have to stop spending so much. You have to lead by example and slash your budgets when you are clearly the leader in this field of overspending for what is very good players and very good talent. Nothing against the players themselves, but they're not worth that price tag. With that in mind, let's go to the players, because it's not just all management. We've had many players come and go, but for Team Liquid, just looking at this roster and the players that were here, I feel horrible for Piosik. Reigning world champion, he played his ass off in this tournament, and he notably spoke in an interview, which we have no reason to believe that he's lying or fibbing the truth, and obviously there will be another side to the story, but it makes sense with everything going on. He said that they picked Ari in their game that they ended up losing, and he got stuck on Sejuani duty because of APA's champ pool, which is fine. That's a limitation. I'll get into APA later, but my man did everything he could here and was single-handedly going to be the reason why we would have beat T1. He tried his best, and he wore his heart on his sleeve at all times and was a phenomenal personality, and I just don't see a world where he ends up staying in North America. He was on a one-year deal. He's likely going to go back to Korea because I'm assuming Team Liquid's going to grow some common sense and actually slash their budget, as I just previously mentioned. And with that, you probably won't be able to afford Piosik because his price tag is just going to be higher. His level of play, especially come the international tournaments, is probably worth more than we'll be able to pay him in North America, unless he really wants to take a pay cut and enjoys the lifestyle here, of which I would just say he better still be able to perform going forward into the future. We don't want to see that fall off. Newer league fans might not know this, and I'm becoming more and more aware that there are fans that join after like 2019, 2020 era, so I will just fill in a little bit of context and history here. When Doublelift was on Team Liquid, it was him and Core JJ. They were like the best bot lane duo that had ever played the game in North America, if we're being honest. They had a messy breakup, for lack of a better term, and Team Liquid decided to stay with Core JJ instead of Doublelift because Doublelift was very spring didn't matter, kind of gave up and just was mentally like checked out and done. It's a very Doublelift thing to do, and I don't blame them for sticking with Core JJ. However, it has been 4 years since Core JJ has done really anything of note. This year in particular has been egregiously bad. Neither player really came out from the situation fully clean, but at this point, Core JJ's got to start getting more flame than he normally would. His contract is up this year, so I don't know what we're going to see. There was rumors of him possibly retiring, to which I would say, hey, best of luck if you do. If he goes back to Korea, fine. But whatever price tag we were paying for him is too much. That's going to be a theme of conversation around all of this, is that it's fine if you keep these players, and I wish they would keep them. You just have to pay the right amount, which in North America right now, given revenues dropping for teams, the revenue split for the league dropping, it does not make sense to pay any more than you absolutely have to and try and keep some continuity. So if Core JJ wants to stay, great. For the right price, even better. You can't overpay for him anymore. It's not worth that price. Summit, same thing. If you want to keep him, by all means, we understand the flaws that Summit is going to have. He is going to run it down at times, and that became a problem later in the point this year. I don't know how many top laners that you're going to get that will be an upgrade over him, so I'm not going to sit here and be like, you need to replace him with this person. No, but so long as you're paying a fair price for what he's actually delivering you, then that's fine. But if you're paying any more than that and driving yourself into a loss because of it, then that's a problem. Now it's when it gets tough, because I know a lot of people are going to look at Yawn and APA and be like, yeah, they underperformed, because they did. At Worlds, like, it was bad. But given the rumors that we're hearing about internal issues with Team Liquid, I'm likely to give Yawn at least a pass temporarily, because he clearly has the hands for the game. He has shown that domestically several times. And there's nothing wrong with a player like him putting his heart on his sleeve every time, like people want to criticize him for sometimes. It's just when you're in a system that's imploding, that's obviously going to make it worse on you. So if you fix those issues, there's no reason why, at least in my eyes, you should see Yawn be passed on from Liquid. Same thing for APA. Yes, his champion pool is clearly an issue, and he's young. But don't forget, he literally subbed in halfway through Summer Split and helped them get to Worlds. He's very unpolished, but that's fine with a young player, especially new, younger players coming out from North America. We're not Korea, we're not China, and we're not Europe, where these younger players have this insane development system underneath them to be able to work their way up and come out a little bit more polished. We have nothing. Academy is horrible in terms of the coaching improvements, in terms of the development of players. Like, it's just not there. And everybody that I've talked to within the NACL scene, it's just like, yeah, we're not leveling up our players enough to get to the LCS, and then even when they do get to the LCS, we're not doing a good enough job coaching there to level them up to where they need to be to compete internationally, or at least like contend on a consistent basis. So judging APA too harshly based off this World's performance would be a gross thing to do from the LCS community as a whole. He has issues that he needs to fix, yes, but give him the right people around him, not just players, but more importantly, coaching staff, to be able to polish those rough edges. He deserves a continued shot, whether it's on Team Liquid or somewhere else. I do not want to see this guy get passed up on, especially given that his contract's probably going to be fairly low. He's a rookie player in North America and is basically going to be right at that minimum salary or just barely above level that most players should be getting nowadays. Palafox was unfortunately the one to give us our memeable quote of Worlds this year, saying that, yeah, we just need new players in that can actually improve, because the veterans that we've seen come to Worlds simply don't improve as time goes on. And he's not wrong, and he's not wrong about like us getting better each and every year, but here's the problem. Let's say you have 3 lines here, and these are your rates of change. Yes, we might be improving, but when the LCK is improving at a faster rate and is already ahead of us, and the minor regions below us are improving at an even faster rate, and starting to pass us, what are you left with? The problem with teams like Team Liquid is that you are overpaying with the specific intention of trying to win Worlds or make deep runs at Worlds, and it has never done that. This graph of change proves that point. You can't just pay players to come in, slot into the system, and it's magically gonna work. You could literally take you could probably take JDG of this year, put them in LCS, and I promise you they would not win the next year. We have too many issues internally, and quite frankly, it's just not good brand building at this point. I don't understand what TL thinks that they're getting out of this, because if they say, oh, you know, we get more popular players, we paid more money for the bigger names to come in and, you know, build up a reputation, well, we're seeing the stands in LCS finals dwindle. So we're not replacing the old fans at that big of a rate that's worth that price tag. So why would you pay millions when you could pay a roster a quarter of that to do the exact same thing? That's literally insane from Team Liquid's part. The final thing I'll say about Team Liquid is just, I understand that Steve's heart is in the right place, that he just wants to do good. But when you look at K-Corp and you look at all of these other organizations that clearly have a better understanding of how to grow grassroots fandom, because K-Corp now has an arena, you look at Loud and some of these other fan bases, they are doing more to build their brand with less results in lesser systems than any North American team has ever done, given that we're paying 20 million times more. Your goal next year should not be to win Worlds, and this is not exclusive to you. It should not be to go to semifinals. If that happens, then great. Your goal should be to fill the LCS stands with 20 more people that are not just there to see a name, they're there to help grow the LCS, and they're there because they genuinely love your team and the product and will be there long term and can invest in. I'm tired of this focus on Worlds results being the reason that we build rosters and do all this, when the sole reason that we should do it is to grow our region, period. And winning is no longer an option for that. It wasn't last year and it's not now. So stop overpaying for it. Luckily, Cloud9 and NRG can salvage this at least a little bit. They're still in the tournament. They still have a chance at least giving us some level of hope from North America that, yeah, maybe our top two teams can actually contend with some of the best in the East and obviously Europe as well. But make no mistake, regardless of what they do as well, winter is coming. It moved as slow as seasons 1 through 6, but we're at season 7 where the wall has come tumbling down and every bad thing is about to speed run its problem through the LCS. And hopefully we have enough on the other side to still make it out and have our spin-off series like House of the Dragon, and we haven't ruined too much to the point where it's unrepairable. So yeah, Team Liquid's Worlds performance was terrible. It wasn't the worst in LCS history, but it's up there. And next year, I swear to God, if I see Team Liquid pay an absorbent amount of money to do the same thing, I'm gonna lose entire faith that we have any sense of business and marketing understanding within this league. I don't know what else to say.